Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Roy, Scala software engineer here at Hivemind Technologies, and with me is my colleague Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, also at Hivemind Technologies for the last couple of years as a Scala engineer. Um, yeah, hi.
And we're going to be discussing pair programming. Here at Hivemind Technologies, we practice extreme programming methodology in our development teams, and a core component of that is pair programming. So to quickly go over what is pair programming, to quote Kent Beck's book, which I've got right here, Extreme Programming Explained, it's where two programmers write all production programs together sitting at one machine. Now that's quite a rigorous definition right there, but he does go on to elaborate later. He says you don't have to be permanently sitting next to each other all the time, 8 hours a day at the office. He said people need both companionship and privacy, he goes on to say, and if you need to work on an idea alone, go and do it. Then come back and check with your team. But the key thing to remember there is that code is written together as part of a team, maybe not even just a pair, but with multiple people, so that you're checking with each other constantly. And yeah, so you're not just an isolated worker writing all the production code that's going to run on your production cluster later. It gets reviewed not just again at PR time. Isn't that right, Sarah? When you've already written pages and pages of business logic and architecture logic, it gets reviewed more directly as it's being written. So yeah, would you agree with that, Sarah?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought of,
Yeah.
because I think it's really important in a team that you have that sort of team ownership of code where you
Mm.
typically with the pull requests. So obviously you have Git blame feature in your IDE, but that's just the person who committed it. There would be like a team ownership and
Yeah.
responsibility. So
That's the
yeah,
key word right there, team. It's not
yeah.
individual developers working on tasks, it's teams working on tasks, which is why at Hivemind, although we do use Jira with some customers, and we do end up having to assign one developer to the ticket, as Jira says, we work in work streams, which are small groups of developers. So you and I previously worked it was a work stream of largely just us two and occasionally a third person. But still, that meant a task was assigned to the work stream and we worked on it together. And if not
Yeah,
100% of the time, but when crucially figuring things out, we would go through it together.
yeah. I think even on a smaller project, you should never be by yourself as a developer, because you've always got that kind of opportunity then to share the code and
Mm,
we did this. Someone, literally an individual, has to commit that code or
yeah. It's
yeah.
actually kind of why I don't like the name of that thing in GitHub, the Git blame feature, because I know it was just a cheeky word, perhaps by Linus Torvalds, because he likes a cheeky joke, but it is quite an aggressive
Yeah,
word to use. So
yeah. We certainly wouldn't blame
no,
the individual person when
I
it's
mean
going through those processes.
it is the classic case when you're looking into a bug and it's like, who committed this garbage code, and it's like, who do I blame for this? And
It's
then
usually, oh, me.
that was me, quite 6 months ago, me or something. That is my fault.
Yeah.
What was I thinking? Yeah. So yeah, that's the kind of idea of pair programming. And then typically Kent Beck suggests no more than 4 to 5 hours in a day. Although I think you noted that's perhaps even a bit too much for you, and I think myself the same. Perhaps 3-ish hours is enough for me because it can be quite an intense process. Because I like to think of it as both of you being your most productive selves together. Like you kind of positively feed each other,
Yeah,
and
you can't really,
yeah.
yeah, you can't, sorry to interrupt, but
No,
you
no.
can't switch off.
Mm,
It is intense. So I would say, yeah, my limit's probably a bit less than that.
yeah.
But,
So maybe 3 hours in a day, or maybe 15
yeah,
hours in a typical 38-hour work week, or however much you're comfortable with. Some people you might be able to do more, and again, it might be who you're pairing with as well.
yeah,
Maybe with someone else you can pair longer. Others people I'm thinking as well, perhaps, especially if the bigger the divide, like a junior developer with a principal engineer, the junior developer might get tired out a bit quicker because the
Mm.
principal engineer might be bringing newer ideas to them and more uh,
Yeah.
rigorous programming techniques or something that
Yeah.
the junior will have to go away and revise.
Yeah, it could well be more tiring. I'd like to suggest though that everyone brings something. I, it's not even a junior
Yeah,
brings stuff to pair programming. It is definitely a two-way uh, thing.
exactly. It's
It-
always about different ways of thinking about an idea, and
yeah,
even juniors can have fresh perspectives, which can benefit principal engineers a lot. And yeah, that's another crucial thing with pair programming is it doesn't matter who's pairing with who. Like there might be a senior or principal engineer needs someone to pair with, and they might call a junior to come get their perspective. And just in that kind of discussion of the problem, maybe they come up with a solution themselves. But it's still that's kind of the power of pair programming right there.
yeah,
And yeah, so we already talked on some of the benefits as well. So you get the various perspectives, from seasoned hands or from fresh young faces, fresh young graduates. You still get various perspectives and different ways to think of an idea or to look at a problem. And through that, you might find better solutions quite often. I found that quite often talking with you when we paired on things that I might look at one thing and could only see a single solution, and then you would come in and just immediately spot a different way of doing it just because
mm,
you've got a different perspective.
yeah.
And exactly.
Um, yeah, I think when I was thinking about it, some of the stuff is more abstract as well. There's the particular problem that you're working on, but then there's the morale boost. So you get,
Mm,
it might feel weird when you're first in a new team with someone and you've never worked with them before, but I think that gets easier and you're kind of team building,
yeah.
doing it. Um,
Yeah, definitely morale plays a big part, especially in our line of work as well. Because
yeah,
if you feel unmotivated by not, getting stuck on a problem, then you won't be thinking your best. You'll be kind of stuck in a little tunnel
yeah,
and not able to see things. So you're just getting the chance to chat with a friendly face and
mm,
go through these issues, these technical issues. None of us are experts. We're all figuring things out and learning, especially new technologies all the time because it's
yeah.
always a new library or a new technique to learn.
Yeah, that's quite good actually. When I first, I mean, when I was very, very inexperienced programmer and started to pair program with someone very experienced, I did feel totally out of my depth and it was too intense and too
Mm,
much. But other than that very first few weeks or whatever, um, I think, um, I think you do one of the things, even if you're less experienced than the person you're pairing with, it's quite sort of refreshing to see they don't know everything as well.
mm.
They're all kind of like figuring things out. I'll just look at the docs or I'll just, no one that I know is just sitting there um, coding without any kind of thinking or assistance or that kind of thing. So we're all learning.
Exactly, yeah. And we're all learning, so they call it knowledge transfer. So you avoid the dreaded knowledge silos in your
Yeah.
company as well. Actually, I even have a specific example of this knowledge transfer. I had when we had a colleague come in just to help us in our project a little bit, and I was struggling with an issue, and I asked if he could pair with me just so I could talk through the issue. I knew he actually didn't know the library that well, but I thought if I just talk it through with him, then maybe I'll come up with a solution. And eventually, yeah, it did. It was a very useful, like about a 1 hour call, going through the code together, explaining the problem and everything, and eventually came up with a solution. And yeah, he didn't know that library well, or even the concept that this
Yeah.
library, it was Zio layers. So he didn't really know Zio much at all, and he knew even less about layers.
Yeah.
But he learned a lot from that, transferred the knowledge. And then after
Yeah.
that, he went away and studied a bit more, and he wrote us an article on Zio layers. It's up on our website and
Yeah.
is
Great.
very extensive and very informative. So
Yeah.
that was a clear benefit that we at Hivemind that we gained from just a short pair programming session.
I guess knowledge transfer. Actually, also thinking of like domain knowledge on the project. So rather than a single developer knowing about this particular aspect of the service or project, that would then be shared. So you've got that kind of resilience when someone's away or
Yeah, exactly. The domain knowledge is typically much harder to understand, especially as we might not have access to a domain expert with a client or something, but if that knowledge gets into the team and we can spread it out, it benefits everyone. So if it's, some financial kind of domain knowledge, or previously at other jobs that worked in telecoms, and the telecom stuff can get very complicated very quickly. And it helps to really understand even just the task, like a new feature, understand it better if you understand the domain side of it and what's driving it. Definitely. And actually like to talking of previous jobs, how it compares to like a standard developer reviewer setup. That's kind of more typical in kind of classical programming industry. So I'm sure you've had it before. You come into work, pre-COVID times, you come to your desk at the office, and maybe you've got to stand up in the morning and the team lead says, right, Daniel, you've got this Jira ticket, you've got 2 days to do it, off you go. Maybe, you sit down at your desk, maybe that task has been refined by the team lead and a domain expert, and maybe, a decent description or something, maybe some test data, I don't know, and it just says, go make it. And maybe you just end up, write all the code. Maybe it goes quite well. You write all the code, and 2 days later, boom, you've got a PR up on Bitbucket. Problem is, then you've written, I don't know, 200 lines of code and weird logic that you've had to figure out yourself, and then your colleague comes to review it, and they're like, they have no idea what you've written. Like, it's not a case of just read the code, you understand it. It's like there's domain logic in there, there's business logic that you need to understand, and this colleague maybe doesn't get it.
Yeah, when those pull requests get far too big, you just typically get a looks good to me as far as I know kind of approval rather than any real feedback.
Exactly, yeah. So they haven't been included in the development process maybe at all. Maybe you could have asked them for help during the time, but maybe not. It's not your company policy, they've probably got their own work going on. Then quite often you just fall into this trap where you just, even a small feature can balloon out in size quite quickly, and they're just staring at a wall of code that they don't understand, and they'll just give you the green tick and you merge away.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later the bug tickets come in, and it's just like, oh no, didn't see that issue, and so on. I mean, maybe you'd say, oh, just write more test cases, but again, even just thinking of the test cases can be hard on your own. I mean, that's what we did before. We had a big feature where to come in, and we sat down and we wrote out all the test cases first, and then I went away and wrote the code. And at that point, writing the code was trivial.
Yeah.
Because we had the test cases.
And then I came back to add a feature or fix a bug or something, and it was simple with that test setup. It was a delight.
Yeah, exactly. And that's again why at Hivemind we practice test-driven development. I feel like it goes hand in hand with pair programming, because then you can just use the pair programming just to write the test suite, and that could be all that's needed, really. And you cover all the functionalities, all the happy paths, error cases, just with the test cases. And then at the end, when you want to prove it works, just read the test cases, make sure it's all there. And actually going back to the old classic way, you can, if you don't have a policy of pair programming, sharing knowledge and empowering each other, it can be quite daunting, especially if you're a junior developer, asking a senior developer for help.
Yeah, unless you've got that set up as a sort of default way of working, it can very much feel like that.
Exactly.
I think similar reasons, pair programming can be quite scary or daunting at first. So when you very first, if you've worked somewhere which is more like how you've just described, and then you come to work at Hivemind or somewhere else, and pair programming is kind of the norm, it can be quite because you have to sort of, you know, it's honest. This is what I am. This is what I can do. This is can be quite sort of
quite off-putting, quite daunting.
Yeah, quite daunting, I'd say, to start with.
Especially as well, personally, at previous jobs, particularly during your probation period, you've just been hired, maybe on a salary that you feel like you don't deserve, and you know you're sitting there trying to prove that you were a good hire, to prove that you're going to pass probation and everything like that. And then it's like, oh, if I just ask, I can't go and ask my colleague, even if they might be your dedicated, I don't know, your buddy or whatever, and they might have that kind of system. You still feel like, but he might think I'm an idiot if I ask him about.
I know this already, and then your inferiority complex
exactly. Like if I'm doing I even had a previous job. I was still, you know, more senior at that point. I was already had like 6-7 years industry experience, but my previous job was the first time I had to work more seriously with Cat's Effect. And I had one time I had I was stuck on something, you know, something very Cat's Effecty. I had an F of a T of a thingamajig, and I needed a T of an F of a thingy, and it's like I was completely washed. I had no idea why the compiler wasn't resolving to the type I wanted. So, but at this point, I was like, I just ask for help. I don't feel ashamed about asking for help. You know, expressing that I don't know a thing. I called up a senior developer in the team, and it was a pretty horrible experience, honestly. He did not kind of feel like helping me. He felt like I should have known this. And well, he said that explicitly several times. He's like, oh, come on, this is simple. You should know this. And I was like, maybe I do, but I can't find it right now. So can you just poke me into the right direction? And after like 20 minutes, he said, "I'll just forget about it. Just push what you've got and I'll fix it." And I think I ended up writing my resignation letter the same day. So that was a classic example of how not to do pair programming. He belittled me and made me feel bad. Oh, by the way, afterwards I went for a cup of tea, came back and figured it out. So, so it was like, yeah, I had the knowledge. I just needed a bit of assistance from a colleague, a friendly colleague, just to kind of, you know, help me get down the road.
Or maybe some honesty if he actually if he couldn't help you.
Maybe that too.
A cup of coffee or something.
Could have been.
That's what that example makes me think of.
Could have been.
You definitely need to have that environment where everyone feels safe to.
Exactly. That's very important here at Hivemind, that it's a safe environment. There's no stupid questions. Sometimes you might have a stupid question and, you know, the gooey pink thing behind your eyes just can't find the answer right now. And that's fine. Sometimes you just need a bit of a push. Even our principal engineers here sometimes fall into traps and, you know, can't find obvious answers. It happens. We can't expect us all to perform perfectly all the time. And just having a bit of support from a friendly colleague goes a long way.
Yeah.
And you end up producing much better code for your customers, don't you? And yeah, so another thing to point out at the beginning, we said pair programming is about working at one machine, but counterintuitively, Hivemind is a remote first company. Remote first even before the pandemic. So since we were founded in 2014, so we're very, very used to working remotely now through Zoom. And oftentimes pairing just means doing a Zoom call and maybe sharing your screen of your IDE and talking through the code as you go. But we've also made use of some plugins. So IntelliJ's got the code with me functionality. So the other person signs in and it allows them to have like a live editor on their IntelliJ. So you're looking at the same thing, and then you've used a live share in VS Code.
And that's a similar kind of plugin that you copy a link and you can share share with your colleague. As same as you, I'm more familiar with working with IntelliJ, but assuming you can both work on the same IDE, which is
Mm,
normally pretty interchangeable, then
yeah.
that can be good as well. But yeah, we do tend to share a screen more often than not, don't we?
Yeah, it's a much more simpler way to do it. 'Cause quite often you're talking through the code anyway, so you might not have to write that much,
Yeah,
or just talking through the tricky parts. Quite often, yeah, we talk more of an higher level, abstract level of way of doing things, not explicitly like here's the line of code to write here. That's
yeah,
most developers can do that on their own if needed. It's that
yeah.
high level ideas that need to be worked out first.
And sometimes you need your own space for that anyway, as you said, like.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, writing the code can be the easiest, but perhaps also the most boring part of it. So,
Yeah,
and frees up. I mean, in back in our team, like maybe you helped me with something, and then once we'd figured out the high level stuff, written test cases, I would go away, write the code, the implementation code myself, and that free you up to go maybe help someone else out, help
yeah,
out another colleague.
yeah. Whilst both have visibility on that same thing, it's just helps both parties and the team and the project
Hmm.
um immensely. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and it allows us to produce our best work and much faster as well, because
Yeah.
1 hour of productive work is worth a lot more than perhaps a whole day of unproductive work, of unmotivated
Yeah.
work, for sure. Okay. Right. I think that's everything we wanted to discuss today. So thank you very much for joining me, Sarah, on this discussion of pair programming.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Excellent. And yep, to everyone at home, we hope you are interested in hearing more about how Hivemind technology works. So please check out our YouTube channel and our website. And please feel free to get in touch with us. We offer workshops on fast delivery methodologies, as well as other technologies as Kubernetes, Flink, and large language models. So yeah, please get in touch if you're interested. And that's all from us for today. So thank you and bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hi.